So we will just wing it today, and I'll do my best to keep the cursor out of the way. So welcome everyone to our series on our cancer support webinar series, Finding a New Normal. My name is Stacey Gerardin. I'm a health psychologist. As well as for someone supporting someone through an experience of cancer. So hopefully by the end of this talk, you will get a better understanding of why it can be challenging to get back to normal, and also have some strategies in your toolbox to help take some steps forward in a direction that's helpful for you. So like Kerry mentioned, because we're recording the session, please do save your questions till the end, and we'll allow some time for those questions at the end. But if you have any difficulties, Kerry's here as well, so you can just email her. All right. So an overview of today's topic. So over the next sort of hour or so, I'm hoping to cover all of these areas. So really coping with cancer coming to an end. We'll discuss the ongoing impacts of cancer. What we talk about is the cancer hangover. We'll explore finding a new normal now that things can be different or are different. We'll talk about how to manage worries, fears, anxieties about cancer.
Your volume is.
We'll just put you on mute there if that's okay. There we go. Managing fatigue, and we'll touch on as well how to sort of set goals and work around pacing and the management of fatigue around cancer. So why this topic? Well, we know that it's natural for people to want to get back to a normal as soon as possible following a cancer diagnosis and treatment. And it's really also quite common for people to struggle in terms of how to do this. For a lot of people, the emotional processing of that cancer experience can happen once treatment's finished. So there's an emphasis on just, the practical aspects of getting through treatment. And then once treatment has stopped and the support falls away, there's this space to kind of process what's happened and make sense of that experience. And like any major event in life, cancer leaves an impact. But as time goes on and life starts to rebuild, cancer can start to fade more into the background. And so it can be useful to think about a metaphor of like rings on a tree, where it certainly had an impact and it's left a really central mark on an experience for a person, but that over time more growth occurs around that. So when will it end? Well, while we're having treatment, there's often and naturally a focus on the end, just getting through to the end of treatment. But the end can actually mean different things for different people. So it might mean the last appointment with the oncologist, the last day of chemotherapy, the 5-year remission mark, or when someone takes their last pill. And so it can be hard to really define what an end to that experience is. So we think about really sometimes there's not actually a definitive end point for the cancer experience. And many people find that they're actually living with cancer or the impacts of cancer for a long time. So it can become more of a chronic process to experience. And additionally, although the physical treatment might be over, the emotional healing can take a lot longer. As we come to terms with the experience, come to terms with the impact of cancer on what that means for a person. Of course, that there are further ongoing checkups. Certainly at the start, these might be quite frequent and then they start to taper off. But these appointments and reminders are reminders of the cancer experience, of having had cancer, and often bring about a lot of fears, worries, anxiety about recurrence as well. And these appointments can really make it difficult to feel like cancer has come to a definitive end. For many people, there may be medications or symptoms that do continue for a long time. And again, these can be a constant reminder of cancer and can make it really challenging to take steps forward, or to feel like the emotional processing has come to an end and can move forward following the cancer experience. So we often refer to the ongoing effects of cancer as a cancer hangover. And if you look at this list, and this is not a complete list, there are certainly much more impacts than just what we've got on this slide. But if you have a look at some of these things, it's no wonder people can find it hard to get back to normal. When some of these symptoms and side effects can have a real impact. And so these are some of the common ones we hear about. They're certainly not all of them, but if you have a look, we've got changes in physical functioning, fatigue, changes in appearance, of course, fears of recurrence, changes in relationship dynamics and the sick role and the carer role, returning to work, not being able to return to work, there can be losses around that. Certainly changes in intimate relationships relating to sexual functioning or infertility can be a real struggle for many couples returning to, I guess, finding that normal following treatment. And there can be a questioning of spirituality, of faith, of purpose, of meaning as well. So it's not just the physical impacts of the cancer experience, but the emotional, the spiritual, the relationship aspects that can all have a big impact, that can leave its mark and can be challenging to navigate through. So in terms of processing loss or change, and I guess it's really important to acknowledge that losses and changes have occurred for many people through this cancer experience, not just for the patient themselves, but for supporters, for loved ones too. These losses can be physical, they can be physical changes to the body, to energy levels, your ability to do the things that you want to do. There can be changes in emotional aspects of life. Somebody might find that they're struggling with more fears or worries. They might feel more flat or feel less confident in themselves. Of course, practical changes and losses can occur. Perhaps your diagnosis or treatment has meant that you aren't allowed to drive for a while, or work has been impacted. And that can really create a lot of uncertainty as well. There can be social changes, so perhaps there might be a feeling that people haven't been there for you in the way that you'd hoped they would. So maybe some people didn't show up in the way that you'd hoped, or maybe you're just not up to socializing at the moment. You haven't quite got the energy for that. You may feel more withdrawn from the community. There can be spiritual changes. For some people, a cancer experience can really strengthen their spirituality, their faith, whilst for others it might have the opposite effect. It might create some challenges in this area of their life. So if we consider all of these changes and losses, it's really no wonder that our sense of security is shaken after a cancer diagnosis. So while there are often many losses that follow a diagnosis of cancer, people are often able to draw upon some strengths or some positives that may have come out of their cancer experience. It's important to note that this can happen at various stages of the cancer experience, and it might not happen for everyone. But the reason for this is that as humans, it's our natural tendency to try and find meaning or a sense of purpose, to try to make sense of a difficult or a traumatic experience. The search for meaning helps us to understand what it was that we went through and why. So some typical benefits that people might talk about in experiencing this growth can be around strengthening of bonds, of relationships. Many people find that they can really feel a sense of community, of people coming together in this time of need or time of stress or trauma. It can help people to rediscover or reaffirm values that are close to their heart, what really matters to them, and really reaffirm commitment to living life in line with these values as well. And that might inform changes to lifestyle too, maybe changes around positive lifestyle changes to help live that rich, full, meaningful life in the best possible way. And also it can help people to maybe feel more present, more aware of their life, of what matters to them, but live in the moment a lot more, really take pleasure and enjoyment of each and every moment. So what can help with this? Well, we know that social support is really important. Social support can look like different things, but certainly talking things through with others around you, and this doesn't have to be a formal process. It can be coming and talking to a psychologist or a counsellor, but talking with a friend, a loved one, someone you trust, over a cup of coffee or going for a walk. Sometimes people find that connecting and having support through an activity can really help with that sort of natural process of opening up and talking about what's going on for you. It's really important in expressing needs, what your needs are right now, because often there's a sense of people not really understanding that this cancer hangover still has an impact, and it can be helpful to really communicate and let people know, those people around you, when you need space or when you need some help, and what that might look like. So allowing people to help you, because while you may feel like you're ready to get back a lot of your independence that may have been lost or impacted, it can still be helpful to recognize that people want to help, and to allow people to help might actually allow you to engage in other areas of life, put energy into those other valued domains too. Because as you recover from treatment, what you might need or might change over time, and so it's communicating that with the people around you. We also know that processing emotions can help as well. So this can be an informal experience where, again, you're using that social support to talk with people about what's going on for you, what you're feeling. It might mean writing, it can just be about getting a paper and pen and jotting down some things that are on your mind, some reflections. It might be a more formal setting, such as talking to a psychologist, whether that's in person or over a video call like this. And sometimes people actually get a lot of benefit in processing their own experiences through hearing others' experiences, if that's something that you find helpful. We might think about support groups like Facebook groups, where there's a sense of understanding, of shared experience in some way, that can really help to connect and to share and to process those emotional impacts of the cancer experience. Mindfulness meditation is another way of being able to process and help move through this experience, in terms of being able to sort of sit quietly, observing your breath, observing your body without judgment. This helps us to diffuse from, or what we mean by diffuse is to get some distance between us and the intensity of our thoughts, our feelings, our physical symptoms. So when our experience is really heightened, or we feel we're sitting with strong emotions or physical sensations, engaging with our breath can help to ground us in that moment, and to be able to experience those experiences, those sensations, those emotions, those thoughts without judgment, without trying to struggle with them. And it is a skill, so it may be about just starting with your breath, some informal breathing. And that really does help to improve our sense of connection to what's important in our lives. It can help to reduce intense feelings of anxiety, anger, and stress. But again, it's not the intention of meditation, it's more a byproduct of helping to slow down and be present with what is. So it's, I guess, in terms of what helps, it's thinking about, what's a place that you could start, whether it's talking with a friend, writing a few thoughts or feelings down, talking to a psychologist, making some time in your day to do some breathing. Because it's really understandable that we might expect to want to get back to normal as soon as possible. Or it might perhaps be other people in our lives that have these expectations of us getting back to normal in our work life, or back to normal in the roles that we have in our family relationships or in our friendships, to get back the confidence that we might have had. And as we've explored, this might not be as easy as it seems, not knowing physical limitations, and there might be a gap between our expectations, which might be up here, and our reality, which might be here. And this gap can create a lot of frustration. It can create a lot of discomfort and distress as you navigate how to get back to where you want to be. So a new normal might be about recognizing that things are different and acknowledging that that's okay. So instead of gunning for getting back to an old normal, an old self, it's reflecting on what this new normal might look like. And this takes into account that things can be different physically and emotionally, spiritually, and adjusting things accordingly. And that's okay to take some time to do that, to reflect on that. It might mean thinking about the kind of work that we do, the kind of roles that we play in our family, in our relationships, how we want to be, how we spend our leisure time, what that means for us, what that might look like, the role that we have in our community, if that's something that's important to you, and really sort of reprioritizing really what matters to you, how you're going to be spending your energy and your time. So we spent a bit of time talking about the impact of the cancer experience and how that can lead to, I guess, a real process of adjustment in terms of moving forward and thinking about the emotional processing and adjusting to any sort of physical limitations and changes in relationships. And I guess because we've been sitting and looking at the screen for a little bit, I just want to encourage you to have a quick stretch break, to move a little bit, move your body, maybe look away from the screen for a couple of minutes, and or maybe not a couple of minutes, we haven't been going for that long, just for a minute or so, and then I will take us back for the second half of the talk. So I'll just give you a minute to move, to look away. Because it's important that when we're looking at a screen, to pace ourselves. Yeah, you might want to shift your position, move around, have a glass of water. Okay, so now that we've had a bit of an opportunity to move a little bit and give our eyes a break from the screen, let's move into talking about some of the strategies around, some of the ways that we can consider what a new normal might look like, and some strategies to implement that. So as psychologists, we talk a lot about using our values to guide what we do to live a rich, full, meaningful life. And I think it's important to take time to reflect on your values, particularly if you're finding that you're struggling with life after a cancer diagnosis. it can be really helpful to take some time to think about what's important to you, what matters to you in your heart of hearts. So values are the things in life that really matter to you, and there's no right or wrong when it comes to values. We all have our own values. They're going to look different from the person sitting next to you. You might have shared values, but you probably also have some that are different, and that's okay. But different from goals is they're guiding principles rather than things that we tick off or achieve. So goals are, for example, we might have a value of being a committed partner, and that's something that we can always strive for. And there's lots of ways that we can demonstrate that through goals. So a goal might be getting married. We can tick it off, we've done it. But we can always strive to engage in our value of being a committed partner. So this is, I guess, an example, if we have a look at the screen here, of some different domains of values that we can consider. And again, not a complete list, but if we were to take some time to think about what we value in these areas. So for example, family relationships. If you're wanting to consider your value in this area, you might ask yourself some questions like, what kind of brother or sister, auntie, uncle do I want to be? Son or daughter? What do I want to bring to this kind of relationship that I hold dear? What sort of relationships do I want to build or cultivate or grow? How do I want to interact with my family members, with people around me? If I was in these ideal relationships, what might that look like? And again, for partner relationships, if we think about intimate partner relationships, so if you're in a relationship that is a committed one, it might be thinking about what sort of partner you want to be. What do you value in a partnered relationship? Are there things like support or communication or openness? How do I want to be when I'm with my partner or I'm away from my partner? What kind of person do I want to be? What sort of relationship do I want to build? If I were my ideal partner in this relationship, what would that look like? How would I interact with them? So it's just starting to ask yourself some questions around what do you value in these areas. Same for parenting. What sort of parent would you like to be? What sort of qualities would you like to have when it comes to parenting? What sort of relationships do you want to build with your children? How would you behave if you were the ideal you in this parenting relationship? When you think about your health or well-being, it's can be helpful to consider, what does your health give you? How do you want to be in relation to your health and well-being? Same with work. When you think about your career or employment, what do you value in your work? What kind of qualities do you want to bring to your workplace or to your collegial relationships? What kind of worker do you want to be? What does your career or employment give you? Starting to really think about, what is it, not just about work, that is meaningful for you. If you were living up to your ideal standards of the person you are in your career or in relationship to your work, what would that look like? What would you see yourself doing or acting like? What sort of personal qualities would you bring to that setting? We can have friendships and social life values, so thinking about the kind of friendships you want to cultivate, what they bring to you, what they give you, but also what kind of friend do you want to be? What do you value in these relationships in your social life? Spirituality, that can mean different things for different people. It can be as informal as spirituality, connecting with nature or connecting, with something that's important to you, but it can also be a formal setting, such as participating in an organized religion, but really reflecting on, what is it about this that you value? What's important to you about this area of your life? And of course, learning and growth. That might be formal learning, informal learning, personal growth. How do you want to be in relationship to this area? And I missed off fun and leisure, but of course it's important too. So how do you want to have fun? What does leisure time bring you? What is it about that you value? Okay. So this isn't just an exercise that you do once. It can be helpful to really take some time to reflect on your values, maybe to talk about them with someone you trust, and to continue to think about how consistent you are in being in acting in relation to these valued domains. Because if we're inconsistent with them, that's when we're going to find we're suffering a lot. But if we're prioritizing some and really investing in some of these values, then we can feel like we're really engaged with what matters to us. And it can help to buffer some of the stresses and distress in the moving forward experience. Because once we've clarified our values, then we can work towards our goals. Our goals are things, again, that we set for ourselves to help give us some direction. And if we're linking our values, our goals to the values, we're much more likely to have the motivation to commit to those goals, because that there's something in it that is meaningful for us. It's not a goal that somebody else is setting for us. It's a goal that's really related to something that we hold dear. So if you reflect on some of the values I was just talking about, just thinking for yourself, are there some values that stand out for you now? Maybe these values are ones that have always been important to you, or maybe there's ones that have been reprioritized, or some that are suffering, that haven't had a lot of commitment to them because of the cancer experience. And then maybe think about something you can do this week that's in line with this value, that's consistent with this value. So it might be a value relating to parenting, for example, and you might set a goal to achieve a commitment to that value domain of being a, say, committed parent, or and it might mean a goal of being able to take your child to the movies, for example, and have that sort of quality time together. It might be a health and well-being goal. It might be a spirituality goal. It doesn't matter. It's something that's just got to be important to you. But make that goal a SMART goal. And what we mean by this is goal setting is more likely to succeed when we're specific about the goal. So, for example, a vague goal like I want to get fit is much less likely to succeed than a goal that is specific, like I'd like to be able to walk 20 minutes 3 times a week. We know we've done it, we can tick it off. That's also a measurable goal. That's important. That helps us to be able to achieve our goals when we know that we're able to measure them in time or distance or frequency. A SMART goal is one that's achievable, because if we set a goal that's, say, at the top of the mountain and we're down here, it's going to take a lot of effort to get to that top of the mountain, and it's probably not achievable right now based on your current, maybe energy levels or current fitness or current situation. And then if we look up here, our motivation is going to be low. But if we take a smaller step that's approachable and it's achievable based on our abilities, based on our resources, we're much more likely to succeed in that. And that's important because success breeds success. So when we're setting goals, we want to get achievement, we want to get success, because that gives us more motivation to commit to these goals and to move forward. It needs to be realistic given the situation at the moment. It might be that there's other competing priorities, or it may not be realistic given physical limitations currently. So maybe just reviewing that goal and maybe modifying it a little bit to make it more realistic for you to be able to achieve and get that success. And of course, the T in SMART goals is time bound or timely. If you set a goal that's way too far in the future, you're going to lose momentum or motivation to set out and do it. That's why we think about New Year's resolutions as often failing, because it's too far away. Other things come up that get in the way. But if we have a long-term goal, that's great, but we want to set mini goals along the way to help us to stay committed to that goal and to help us to build progress towards that larger goal as well. And so when it comes to goal setting, really do celebrate your success. It's okay to hit obstacles along the way, but acknowledging when you have been successful, because that good feeling helps to really motivate you to set more goals. Success breeds that success. And of course, setting goals in areas of life that are meaningful for you, that's going to be, an inherent success on its own. So of course, when it comes to values and goals, when we set out to do something, sometimes problems show up or barriers occur, and that's okay. We often hit roadblocks along the way, and sometimes if we take a mindset of it being a learning experience, an opportunity to stop and think about what got in the way of that rather than it being a personal failure, we're able to think in a problem-solving way around how can we overcome any potential barriers that are relating to that goal. It can be as simple as thinking about, do I have a reminder? Like, I'm not in the habit of maybe getting out for my walk at lunchtime and I just got distracted. So can I have a reminder in my diary, an alarm that's going to go off to prompt me to do that? Because remember, it can take 3 weeks for a habit to form. So some help along the way is okay. It might be a prompt through telling a friend or telling, someone you live with to remind you to do something too. That's okay. That's asking for help. Considering the ability of the goal, is it actually a bit too hard right now for you based on your current situation? It may have been an old goal that you could perform, and that's okay. But in order to maybe reflect on where you want to be now, can we break that down into smaller steps maybe along the way? Is it actually not an ability problem, but a motivation difficulty? So, thinking about, is this relevant for you right now? This value might be something that's important to you, but is it relevant right now given your circumstances? And are there other more pressing values that would be worth committing some time to before you get to this one? And it's okay to prioritize some values over others. And of course, giving back to yourself. We talk about self-care. This helps us get a sense of balance. We put a lot of effort into doing the things we have to do, the things that are necessary. And some of these goals might actually be quite challenging. And so to, I guess, refuel our tank, self-care helps us to take some time out to really care for ourselves in the face of these experiences that can be challenging or can take us outside of our sense of, a comfort zone. And so giving back to ourselves can help foster that motivation too. Self-care helps us to relax. It can help manage fatigue, and it can help manage our mood as well. And with self-care, we find that resilience, coping, and contentment all improve too. So what is self-care? Well, it's different for everyone. These are some things that might be self-care. Getting out into the garden, that can be a really mindful experience of, being at one with nature, helping things to grow. Your attention's often focused on that one task. Getting out on the bike, riding a bike or doing some exercise can be a way of taking care of ourselves, both in terms of self-care, but also our physical well-being as well. Having some family time or relaxing with some movies can be a way of chilling out and getting some restorative time. Meditation, going for a walk. Of course, pets are great self-care. We also know that they help with our, really good love bonding hormone oxytocin. So spending time with animals again is very grounding, and it also helps us to feel good. Engaging in cultural activities can help give us a sense of personal identity and connection with our community. Taking some time out to read or to cook. So all these things can be self-care. It's figuring out what works for you. What would you put on your self-care list? What are the things that you do every day? Like stopping to breathe, or having some physical movement in your day, talking with somebody. And what are the things that you do less often, something that you do once a week or once a month. And they don't have to cost much, but it's worth really having a list of things that help you to feel good about yourself, engaging in that self-care, and creating habits around self-care too. So you may leave today's session and I would encourage you to maybe set some goals in this area, set a SMART goal relating to your self-care. Self-care might also have changed during this experience too. Of course, it's also important to optimize your support team, because coming to the end of a cancer treatment experience, people can often describe feeling lost at sea. They feel like they're kind of left out on their own. The support of the doctors and nurses becomes much less regular, and this can be a time where people feel quite isolated and quite vulnerable. So establishing a good relationship with your GP can be some way to mitigate some of that loss of support. If you feel like your GP and you don't connect, that's okay. Having a good relationship is something that's important, and so finding a GP you can trust, who you feel you can talk to, is really important. So it might be asking for a recommendation from a friend. It's absolutely okay to spend some time investing in finding a new GP. Book in a time to see them and talk about what sort of follow-up you'd like, really being quite proactive in what your needs are. And then keeping the contact numbers of your medical team on hand. So it might be that you have these saved on your phone, or you have them on your fridge. You have them available for you, not to serve as a reminder, but so that if there comes a time where you do need to call on them, that you don't have to go searching for the numbers. You might talk to your GP about what sort of access you have to services in your community as well. That might help you get back on track with some of your goals. These services might be work-related support, they might be physical health-related support. It's worth talking to your GP, because they know who's in your community and what supports you would be eligible for. Remembering your GP is not just there to support you physically, but emotionally too. Part of optimizing your support team might be talking to your employer about a return to work program. It may be worth considering a slow re-entry back into work, a graded or a gradual return to work program, where you maybe reduce your days initially or reduce your hours initially to enable you to get back into work, but pace up, so you're not overdoing it and then crashing. It might be thinking about whether some tasks need to be changed, or your job description could be reassessed in some way. And then, of course, talking to agencies like WINS or other agencies, or a career counsellor, if through this process you've reflected on your work and maybe come to a decision that you want to think about a different option or an alternative, that this career isn't where you want to be continuing to invest your time and energy, and so that's okay too. Of course, we know that part of your support team are the people you care about around you, your friends and family, these people who care about you. It's acknowledging that there are going to be times we still want to talk about your cancer experience, and maybe they do too. But also acknowledging that not all the time can be helpful as well, for you to want to be able to engage in that sort of moving forward, finding a new normal process, acknowledging your experience, but also moving forward as well. Some of the communication might be related to managing their expectations of you. It can be hard to still acknowledge that you may still need some help and support along the way with practical tasks, or work or physical limitations, or just to be able to talk. And so being clear in the outset, communicating early on that things might be different for you now and you still need some help, can be helpful to manage their expectations. And of course, for those people around the person with cancer, the supporters have had an impact by this cancer experience too. Their lives have changed too. So allowing them some time to talk and reflect and process on the changes can help to really strengthen those bonds too. And part of the support team are psychologists. And if you feel like that's something that you would find benefit in, or you're struggling with some of these areas, of course, we're here at Cancer Society and other psychologists outside of the setting to help you to cope with moving forward after a cancer diagnosis, to help with that adjustment process, to help with some of these areas that we've talked about today. So moving now to fears of recurrence. This is really common and normal. I think one of the major concerns the number one concern really that arises for people after treatment ends is a fear of recurrence. So what we generally advise is the best place to start is to talk to your oncologist, your medical team, to get an understanding of what normal ongoing symptoms or side effects of treatment to expect, and also to talk about what to look out for and when to come back for follow-up appointments if you're at all concerned. The next part is to really check your own thinking. Your thinking is probably going to have shifted and changed through your cancer experience. It's natural to be more aware of symptoms in your body, to worry about them more, to make meaning of them like you probably wouldn't have in the past. So it's not uncommon for us to jump to a worst case scenario, particularly if you've had a cancer diagnosis. But it can be helpful just to check in with your thinking. So some things to ask yourself might be, what might have I assumed this symptom was before I got diagnosed? Would I have put it down to a headache or a bad meal, maybe having overdone it the day before? Because not every symptom is a sign of cancer returning or progressing, but equally it's okay to acknowledge that these symptoms might be concerning for you and what steps to take. Sometimes it can be helpful to check in with someone you trust before reaching out to the medical team, talking to your partner or a family member to check in with what they might think before then moving forward to the medical team. It may be that you have a 2 or a 3 day rule. If a symptom persists, then you're going to call your GP or call your practice nurse or call your oncology nurse or oncologist at that particular point. But really, it's acknowledging that your thinking probably has become more extreme relating to the symptoms you experience in your body. You're probably more attuned to symptoms in your body. Your body's been through a lot of physical changes and impacts through cancer treatment. And so it makes sense to notice symptoms more, to worry about them more, and to worry about what that might mean. Another area people can struggle with is managing fatigue. Cancer treatments can really cause a lot of fatigue for many people post-treatment for many months. And this fatigue is different from feeling tired. It's not relieved by having a good night's sleep. It's fatigue that is just, it can be really debilitating, and it can affect on your mood. It can affect the things you want to do. It can affect your concentration, your ability to think clearly. Even word finding can be affected. And then, of course, we feel frustrated when we're not able to do the things we used to do. So when we're faced with fatigue, what we encourage people to do is to rather than overdoing on a good day, is to really pace yourself. So for many of us, if we have a day where we're feeling like we've got a bit more energy, it might be that urge to just try and get as much done as you can. So it's make hay while the sun is shining. So you get out and you do all the things that you haven't been able to do. But of course, then you overdo it and you crash. And then from that crash, you get more fatigue and it's harder to pick yourself up again and to get the momentum to get going again. So as being aware if you do fall into that boom or bust pattern, and really trying to be proactive and pacing yourself. So on a good day, sort of setting limits for how much you're going to do, making sure that you do take time to have rest breaks, so that you don't overdo it, so that you're able to do more the next day and the next day and the next day. So you end up being more consistent in what you're doing and build up your activity levels again and your energy levels again, rather than overdoing, crashing, overdoing, crashing. And because when you're engaged in that sort of boom or bust pattern, it can be hard to feel like you can make plans. You don't quite know how you're going to be feeling on any given day, what you're really up to. But with pacing, it feels a bit more predictable, even if it means doing a little bit less in the short term. So really listening to your body, resting when you need to. But that rest doesn't have to be sleeping. It might just be a rest from a physical activity. It could be doing some relaxation. It could be doing something that's relaxing. It doesn't always have to be sleeping. Part of managing ongoing fatigue is around optimizing your self-care, filling up your tank so you've got energy to keep going. And remind yourself that you won't necessarily feel this way forever, that this fatigue, there will come a point where you can have better energy levels again, but it's finding an approach that works during this time. If you think about a broken leg analogy, just like a bone needs time to rest and heal after it's broken, our bodies need time to rest and heal after cancer. Of course, we need to keep up with some activity to keep our bodies strong, but we cannot get back to the full level of activity until the bone is fully healed. So we should therefore be mindful of how our body's feeling, really pay attention to that, and balance gentle activity, gentle exercise with some rest and recuperation as well. Because if we try to run before the bone is healed, we risk breaking it again. So it's really acknowledging that boom and bust pattern can become really unhelpful over time, but pacing, giving yourself time to rest, can be much more effective in achieving the goals that you're wanting to set for yourself. So that, I guess, concludes the part of the talk around strategies as well. And I just want to let you know about some support services that we have available at Cancer Society. So I hope you're all aware of the nursing support that we have. So we have our cancer support nurse specialists who, while you're in treatment, are able to support you through that experience. We also have our cancer information service, so it's the 0800 cancer line. If you have any questions, you can call and you'll be able to speak with a nurse who can help provide answers to your questions and support. We wouldn't survive in our Cancer Society organisation with our amazing volunteers who do so many things for us in terms of driving, being present at the hospital, and around the lodge as well. We have our psychology service, and if you want more information about what we offer, you can have a look on our website or call 0800 Cancer. Our yoga, now that we're going to be in level 1, our yoga is resuming next week, which is very exciting. So yoga is a great way to restore your energy levels. It's a great way to connect with your physical well-being, engage in mindfulness and self-care. So I'd encourage you to really try it out. We run yoga every Wednesday from 11 till 12 and every Thursday from 2 till 3. It's very gentle. It's at the level that you can sustain. You don't have to book, you don't have to sign up, you can just drop in. It's a fantastic class. So I encourage you to give it a go. Our psychology service is based at Domain Lodge in Grafton. That's where I am right now. We have individual psychology sessions for people over the age of 18 who have had a cancer diagnosis and their support people. So we see individuals, we see people as a couple or as families, depending on what your need is. And we can see people at any stage throughout their cancer experience. We have group programs. One of them is Moving Forward. So Moving Forward is a 6-week therapeutic group. It's run once a week for 6 weeks. And this is for, again, issues faced with having completed treatment and moving forward. To participate in this group, you do need a referral via a psychologist. So if there's something you're considering, please either self-refer or call the 0800 number, and you can have a chat with one of our psychologists about whether this is the right group for you. We also continue to deliver our cancer support series. So these are our educational talks here, alternate Thursdays. So we have Riding the Emotional Roller Coaster, Communication and Support, Strategies for Supporters, Sleeping Easy, and Finding a New Normal. And of course at Grafton we have free parking here as well. So if you're concerned about parking, don't be, you can come and park on site. And alternate weeks to the in-person talks, we give the webinars. So today's one is Finding a New Normal, and we run these talks on alternate Wednesdays at 10 o'clock. So if you want to register for these talks to get the Zoom link, please email us, and you can have a look on our website for dates. So this is just how you can contact us. I'm going to be sending you a handout at the end of today's session as well. But you can self-refer for our psychology service, or you can call the 0800 number, or you can have a health professional refer you to through your nurse specialist, your GP, through the hospital. But please remember that our psychology service isn't a crisis service. So if it is an emergency, you do need to speak to someone urgently, please call your GP, call Lifeline, or the Need to Talk service on 1737. But please come along to our next webinar. I hope that you've got something out of today's one. Our next webinar in a fortnight's time on the 21st of October is Coping with Emotions and Communication.